So I was here a year ago on stage debating about the high-tech world, artificial intelligence with Peter Diamandis, and I'm sure many of you saw that. It was a great event, lots of fun, lots of sparks flew. At that point in time, I had some bloating, but I didn't think much of it. It wasn't that uncomfortable, but I went to the doctor anyway during the conference. I was also busy preparing to go to Ukraine, where I've been 30 times. Ukraine is one of the beats that I've adopted as a journalist. Ukraine, to me, is important to a lot of people in Canada because we are the largest Slavic country in the world. 15% of Canadians have a Slavic background, and many of them are Ukrainians. And so there was a ready audience, and it is, to me, Ukraine's struggle is the struggle against Vladimir Putin. It's the line in the sand. If he continues to be stopped, much less pushed back over his border there, we've won the biggest battle in the new Cold War 2.0. So it's always been of interest to me. And so I was making arrangements to go for a couple of weeks, and I was going to go with 5 special forces soldiers. We were going to get on an armored vehicle. I was going to wear a flak jacket, boots, learn how to use an AK-42, and we were going to the Russian front to do a documentary with a documentary maker and a photographer. And I was very excited about this trip. This was like a very exciting thing. Business writers don't do wars. We do annual meetings, which are sometimes wars, so I was very excited about it. And I was looking forward to it. So 4 days after ideacity was over, I went to my doctor's office and I got the dreaded diagnosis, and she said, "You have stage 3 ovarian cancer." And I said to her, "That's a death sentence, right?" She said, "Not anymore. But we got to get moving quickly." So fortunately, we have a terrific medical system in Canada. While I've railed and ranted against government expenditures, I've never touched education and health, ever, because we have one of the best systems, both of them in the world. So fortunately, I found, we got the head of oncology surgery, Marcus Bernardini, who's a world expert in ovarian cancer. It was in the middle of holiday season. And it was interesting that after I got the diagnosis, I just set about doing what I had to do to prepare for what I had to go through. Didn't know how bad it was going to be. I didn't really think about it. I just did what I think my journalistic training teaches you, is when all hell is breaking loose in the newsroom and you're the editor-in-chief, you better keep your head cool and tell people what to do. And move one foot in front of the other and write that story and get those orders and get people chasing down leads and so on and put out a newspaper. So I think that was the training that I automatically benefited from in terms of how I handled. I had no remorse, I had no anger, I had no drama, I had no depression. I said, wait a minute, I got to get my wills in order. I have 2 kids, because I may not make it. I got to get my wills in order. I got to get all the passwords to all my, computers and phones, and I've put it down a piece of paper for my wonderful husband so he knows where to find stuff and get into things, and for my children. And then my children came. They live outside the city. They came in. I organized nurses because I have no family here. I'm an immigrant. My husband works long hours, and my kids don't live in Toronto. So I had to organize all that. And as Libby mentioned, fortunately during that week in the lead up to the surgery, I had the doctor's appointment, and he sat down and he explained, okay, we have 2 options here. He said, you can either have a big radical surgery first and chemo afterward, or you can have big chemo first and a smaller surgery afterward. And I said, you know what? Get it out. I want it out. Let's get it out. So he said, okay. Now he said, the only reason I've offered you these 2 options is because you're in such good physical condition. I played, walked, or swam for decades, every day. I did one of the other 3, every day. I slept 9 hours a night. I'm a champion sleeper. I ate reasonably healthily. And stress, I've learned how to manage very well. So I just went about my business. I had to cancel all my arrangements in Ukraine, which I was very upset about. Fortunately, what distracted me during the week leading up to the surgery was the World Cup was on. And I love the World Cup. And I'd go to a sports bar near my apartment and watch 2 games with a couple of beers and talk to the guys, and I just loved it. So that was very beneficial. Then came the surgery, and the night before I slept 14 hours, like a baby. No anxiety. Like I must be a simpleton or something, I thought. What is going on here? This is not about heroic. This is just the way it was. And the surgery, we went into surgery, and then what followed, and the doctor also said, we're going to do the surgery. Most people would not be able to do the surgery we're going to give you. You're going to be hit by a bus. And he said, and by Christmas Eve, this is June 25th, by Christmas Eve, you will be cancer-free on a CAT scan. Because we'll do the surgery and we'll do the chemos and boom. That was a pretty nice diagnosis, forecast, I thought. Couldn't take it to the bank. And that's another thing I never afforded myself. I never said, what if I don't make it? Well, what if? I never even went to that place, that dark hole. I never went down that dark hole. And I wasn't optimistic and I wasn't pessimistic. So we went to the operation, 11 hours. And here's something very synchronicity weird. Is the day I went through that operation at Toronto General Hospital was the day I was going to get on that armored vehicle and go to the war front. Strange. Both were risky. So I guess because I was willing to do that journalistically, the surgery was, well, this is what we have to do. So I went through it, and I got to say, it was 7 months in duration, and I love the word I like to use for what I went through, or anybody goes through, is the Spanish word calvario, from Calvary, the ordeal and trial of your life. And that's what it is. And it was, very strange to go through it, but I had no pain. I had no pain. I had no nausea. I had no nausea. I heard the horror stories. I never had that. And I had no depression. My husband and my kids kept saying, Mom, you got to see a psychiatrist. You want to see a psychiatrist? You want to see a... I said, no. I said, I am not depressed. I may seem down to you because you know what I am? I'm resolved. I'm resolved. I've got, 7 months every day to get through something, and it wasn't always pleasant. I'm not saying I didn't have discomfort, but I said, I've got to get through every day. I woke up every day. Okay, I'd say to my nurse, what's on today? Were they going to hurt me at 10 or at 12? Do I have to have another stupid test at 2 or what? Or can I sleep? Or what's up? And then, as I likened it, I was put back in, I was rushed to emergency 8 times after my operation. I had 2 subsequent smaller surgeries. It was not fun. But, I would just say, okay, we have to go to emergency. Okay, let's do that. All right, and I get in there, I'd say, oh, I like emergency because they have warm blankets. So give me 2 at a time. So you just learn to find little stupid things. Or I have the nurse, I'd send a nurse or my husband who was wonderful, and I'd say, go down to the deli and get me something, I didn't feel like eating very much. But so you get through it a day at a time. Just a day at a time. And it's resolve. And I had a couple of journalistic friends visit me on month 3, and I was back in the hospital again because my fever had spiked, and they rush you in case you have a problem, an infection. And they sat there, and I said, gals, you know what I'm going through? I just figured it out. Being a writer, you're trying to analyze. I said, here's the metaphor. I'm John McCain. I'm in here. For how long, I don't know. And I don't know what they're going to do to me today or tomorrow or next week. I don't know whether they're going to hurt me or make me feel better or what's going to happen. I don't know the tenure. I'm in a prisoner of war. I'm a prisoner of war camp. And that's actually that helped me sort of break through and stop thinking any other thoughts about what I was going through. This is what I had to do. It was my calvario, and on with it. So sure enough, by Christmas Eve, I had my CAT scan after 6 rounds of chemo. And I was cancer-free. I'm a lucky girl. Now, the cancer, as Libby said, I didn't have a genetic proclivity toward it. Nobody in my family had cancer. I had what they call a sporadic cancer experience. So it's probably a stem cell that was trying to stop growth of something or other in my ovaries, and there was no repressor. So what that meant was, and this was strange, so I wanted to have my blood test genetically tested because I have 2 children, I have 2 grandchildren, I have a sister. And if I'd had the genetic problem, then they had to be tested and they might have it. So they did the blood test, that came back nothing. So I said, well, you know what? Cancer's a sniper. That's what cancer is, it's a sniper. And in my case, it was. So then, after it was all done, the treatment, I think I'd finished my last chemo, like in a matter of 2 weeks. The doctor called us on a Sunday afternoon and says, I have good news. I said, what do you mean? He said, Canada and the United States just approved the PARP inhibitor for BRCA. And I said, well, I don't have a genetic mutation. He said, your cancer does. I said, well, does that mean my kids have to get tested? He said, no, the cancer has it. You don't have it. And this pill is now available, and the results, this is the home run of meds. I've been practicing medicine for decades. This is the home run we've all been hoping for. And basically, it hunts down, as Libby was saying, it hunts down every cancer cell that I have still in my body, despite chemo and despite radical surgery. And it dismantles the RNA, so it can never reproduce. It destroys the cell. Theoretically, if you take it long enough and you don't have too many cells, you're going to get rid of it altogether. So on the CA-125 cancer test, when I got diagnosed by my physician in the beginning, I was at 347. The normal person has between 30 and 39 on that scale. I have 1 since I've taken this pill. And it's quite remarkable. And my doctor and I are trying to talk to AstraZeneca to get them to lower the price. Because unless you have a resurgence of cancer, you can't get this pill covered under OHIP. And it is prohibitively expensive. The only side effect I can't stand is the cost. But I'm lucky enough to be able to afford it. So that's where it is. So I want to give you some advice and some hope. And the hope is that, and I'm an inveterate researcher, and I don't have any definitive information, but I gotta tell you that doctors that I've talked to, including my surgeon, said that if I'd had this 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have made it. But the most important thing, because it's a sniper, you've got to do one thing. The only thing you can do, and I think less than 5% of cancers are genetic, the only thing you can do is be healthy and take care of yourself. If I hadn't been athletic, and had good sleepers, had good sleeps all my life, and been able to manage stress reasonably well, they wouldn't have given me that operation. I wouldn't have had that operation. They wouldn't have done it. People would not have survived an 11-hour operation unless you were in really good shape. And I was 71 at the time. So most people at 60 and above do not get an operation that long, of that duration, for this problem. So I was lucky in as much as I was disciplined. The only thing you can do with this disease, because it is a sniper, is sleep, eat, and exercise well, and learn how to keep stress at bay, because stress does affect all kinds of things. So that's my big advice, and if there's any takeaway you have, when you say, I don't want to go to the gym, and, you know, gee, I really like that piece of dessert, and, you know, I don't want to do another diet. Your option is ignore those things or go on the diet from hell, like I have, 35 pounds. The diet from hell, and hope you survive it. So I think that the outcomes, the research I see is that the outcomes for many cancers have really improved. Hopefully this PARP inhibitor, which is now being tested on other forms of cancer, are going to do the same thing and get that cancer amount down in the bloodstream as it's done with me. Hopefully it continues to work for me, but there's no guarantee. And that's where the other advice comes in. Put one foot in front of the other the rest of your life. Thank you. Did I do good?